Good morning. And as always, want to thank you for joining us this morning. Again, coming with you, just Bear, Camera, and myself. Again, focused on the lesson and not so much on all the frills and lighting and music. My name is the Reverend Richard Pacheco, and I'm so grateful for you to be here as we continue the quest. Today's chapter is on a little old guy we know called Jesus, and talking more about him and how he has evolved, even in my own life, from childhood till now. So, as always, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We will continue to, at least the Sunday services for now. My plan is to add the Wisdom Wednesday. So, we call Sunday the Quest based on the book, The Quest, as well as Wisdom Wednesday will be more around my journey and the things that I'm learning recently. There's been a lot of changes in my life where people have told me from what they've heard and things like that, that they wish they knew. So even though a lot of the things that were taught to me are not, something I can share completely because copyrights and things like that, but the basics of it, which allows you to continue your journey and going out and finding information, finding people, things like that. So as always, if you wish to support us in our mission here, you can always use the donate button at the top of YouTube or on our About page, or you can still go to the website, weesc.org. I haven't updated it much lately because there's going to be a big change to all of that, but there is a link there to our PayPal if you wish to donate. And as always, if you are not supporting us, I do ask that you support the Unity mission because, again, a lot of my teachings come from that, as I am a Unity minister, and a lot of the new thought. So again, we will be talking about Jesus today from the book, The Quest, and we'll move forward from there. So just as we start today, let us go ahead and enter into prayer. So if you feel so moved, go ahead and close your eyes and begin by breathing into this moment, this time, this place where we know that we are in this presence. We release the past and the anxiety of the future so that we may be centered now. We're not worried about what may happen. We're not worried about what happened. We consider this moment the only moment in which we can truly be present in our Christ presence, as well as in the presence of what we call God. And in that breath, we are grateful for being here. I believe we are divinely called for those who are here live or are here later in the week, just catching up, and that's okay. The lesson works the same. The call to action works the same as long as you actually put it to work. And there is so much that I've learned in this time. So I'm grateful to be here to share it with you. With that, I continue to say gratitude for you being here, gratitude for those around me, and gratitude for my family who's been behind me throughout this whole thing as I continue my journey to move forward in ministry and listen to the calling as to what is mine to do. With that being said, all that is left is to say thank you. And we know that it's all being done well because it is in divine order. And we say it isn't so, we let it be. As we affirm it with a so mote be, Ashe, and Amen. So once again, we are truly grateful for you being here. And if you wish to support us further, also check out NairubiNaturals.com, which is my wife's business. She's doing great things. In fact, she'll be at a craft fair this weekend, and also my daughter's business, which is QueenCreationsOnline.com, where she's doing her baked goods and her cookies and all of that, doing great work. Both very powerful women in my circle, in my life, and I am so grateful. And can't wait to see what the rest of my children come up with, ready to take on the world. My Kaylin, who hardly fit in my arm when she was born, is 17 now, so time flies, and I'm grateful for her. And saw her dress today, and she was, oh my God, Daddy, look how beautiful, and she was absolutely gorgeous. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to our reading. And I think this goes well with the call to action that we will have later on, and it is compassion. And our affirmation for today is the acts of loving compassion build my strength. Again, our affirmation is acts of loving compassion build my strength. Whether in my community or across the world, many people face hardships As a member of the human family, I am inspired to undertake compassionate action and help however I can. Sometimes just a prayerful thought or a simple blessing can make a powerful difference in someone's life. Other times, I may be able to take more direct action. I may listen to someone deeply as they share the concerns of their heart, or I may volunteer to drive them somewhere or complete errands for them. Regardless of the form my compassionate action takes, I am motivated to be of sacred service to bring the love and care of God into manifest form through my decisive action. And our biblical verse for today is Matthew 14:14. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. So I think that works well with us today. So let's take a moment and just center in, as we'll do a quick meditation just to really bring us deep into ready to hear this, because I know some of this information may challenge us. So if you feel any angst or anything as we move on to this topic, let's go ahead and breathe into there. Close your eyes if you feel so moved. We'll take 3 cleansing breaths. And as many of you know, I am a graduate. Well, I've earned my bachelor's degree from the International Metaphysics University, or in Sedona. And one of the techniques for us to center in quickly, I'll share with you now. So let's go ahead and breathe. Take a deep breath in again. And now we're going to breathe in for the count of 6. So breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to hold for 1, 2, 3. We're going to breathe out for 6. So breathing out, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going to hold for 3, 2, 1. Breathe in for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Breathe out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Breathe in one last time for 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for 3, 2, 1. Breathe out for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And hold for 3, 2, 1. And breathe in deeply. And breathe out. You should feel centered in this moment at this point. And if not, just practice it. Trust me, it'll come to you. So we move on to today's lesson. And as I said, it is the chapter in the book, The Quest, A Journey for Spiritual Rediscovery. And there's also a workbook that goes along with it. And if you really want to dive into it, I would suggest you get both books. And at the end of reading the chapter, we'll tell you what chapter. And in fact, our call to action actually came from this chapter in the Adventures book, which is the workbook. So with that, let's go ahead and move into our lesson here. And I love the opening question is, did you know the difference between Jesus and the Christ? Understanding this difference will provide you with a wonderful key to yourself. And that's a big thing. It's something I had to learn coming from a Catholicism background. You know, we always saw Jesus as, you know, a divine being. There was never the thought of him being human or a man, other than maybe, you know, through the act of, so we'll say the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed or something like that, that reminded us, but as a child, that Jesus was a divine figure. And as I grew up, you know, and a lot of people were in different sects of Christianity, it's the same thing I heard over and over and over again. And it wasn't until I actually started doing work with like Wayne Dyer or Deepak Chopra. Great book to read is The Third Jesus. If you haven't, I would recommend picking that up. And again, we'll talk later in the lesson about a phrase that was given to me by Dr. Wayne Dyer during his talk on manifesting your destiny, where I didn't understand what was going on. And when I heard that, I was like, well, wait a minute, this was never taught to me when I was studying the Bible and I was in church. And I found the passages and realized that I was directed to only the passages that worked for that particular belief rather than the entire thing. So I started to learn, and that's what brought me to Unity later on, was when I realized that I could take the Bible, which I once had a hatred for because of how it was being used against people, and learn more of a metaphysical meaning. And then going to uh, the University of Metaphysics, or the University of Sedona, that I was able to learn so much more on the metaphysical level. In fact, um, I'm definitely going to dive deeper in. And also through the Urban Ministerial School, they gave a class on advanced metaphysics with Reverend Kyra Lund, and I loved it, trust me. And it made me so much excited for what the possibilities were here. So our biblical passage to open up our lesson today is, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but he will have the light of life. And that's from John 8:12. And I love that the author opens up with the story of Ben Franklin when he used to light his lantern outside his house. And he didn't go around trying to sell it or convince people of it. All he would do is step out of his house at night, light the lantern, and go inside. And anybody who walked around this dark street could always see his light. In time, other people started to mimic and went out and lit their light, which of course brightened the entire place. So, and that's the same thing when we talk about, looking at Jesus as a man, a teacher, as a brother, rather than the sacredness or the divinity that is instilled as him being a higher divine figure. But for us, he is that because of what he discovered within himself, as what we call the Christ consciousness. And it's pretty much, when you read the actual stories and read the parables and read, the biblical writings of Jesus, you will see that he was human in every nature. He angered, he cried, he had conflicts. And we're going to touch on a lot of that through here. But when we talk about the teachings of Jesus, that's exactly how we teach it. It is not about me lecturing you about what's right or wrong. It's about actually putting it into action, putting it into practice, so that you can be the Christ for someone else. And when you discover that, it gives permissions to others to do it. There's a song, I don't remember what the group name is, but I know the place where they sing these songs is Celebration Center in Brooklyn, New York, and he does a lot of gospel-themed affirmation music. And one of them is, be the Buddha, be the Krishna, be the Christ, Jesus, because you may be the only Jesus someone sees in their life. And it is about exactly that, being able to do those things and understand that it is through that other people see. It's not about us lecturing you. These lessons are great, but if you're not putting in the work behind it, then it's just you and I talking on a video right now. It's about you going out and doing the work. I decided to make some changes in my life, and, I made a promise to myself. It was no longer about, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It is about doing the action. And, sometimes being a result-oriented person, I don't see the results right away. But I do my best and stay in integrity. And being in integrity is hard. I mean, I've heard it all the time that, I have too much on commitments as a word promise I will never use unless I know I can fulfill it. But many a times, staying in integrity, is hard. But when you do that, people will see that in you. And it may not always look the same, but they will do the best they can to do exactly that with you. So we talk about the brightest light and, being the light in other people's life. So we understand that when we learn these things from Jesus, it's not about the Bible and the Bible studies and everything else. Don't get me wrong, they're all great, but it's about taking the action, doing the intuition. There are many things that I have done, especially in these recent weeks, that have to come from a Christ consciousness, have to come from what most people will call intuition. It has to come from that place deep inside, because trust me, ego will grab a hold of you and want to drag you all over the place. We worry about what the people around us may say. We worry about, are we validated by certain people? Are we, what will people talk about? What would society think about? Trust me, I go through the same battles. And it is that where the scariest place is, going deep inside and knowing that there's still that place you need to be, or that calling you need to be. So, of course, everything we do here in the Quest and in Unity is based on the teachings of Jesus's life, not so much, what the church or traditional Christianity teaches, but what we've read and what we've metaphysically understood. And if you're new to Unity, that metaphysics means beyond the physical. So we can read what we want, but we'd have to understand past that. And even the word Christian itself means to be Christ-like, or to be Christ-like. So just saying that we're Christian doesn't really mean anything unless we're truly acting in that place. So we know that when we look at Jesus and his teachings, he had two ministries. First was healings and works, so what we would call miracles. Some people would say that they're really nothing more than demonstrations of divine law or universal law, but we call miracles. And the healings that we read through the Bibles and the things he did, those are demonstrations. And the second ministry is his teachings, which usually were parables and sayings and things like that. And how those parables are saying even today can be used. Over the last couple of days, I've been working more on my what my group that I belong to calls my financial pillar. And I always have a struggle of combining the spiritual with the thing. So I've started going back to listening to Reverend Ike. And if you guys know him from the 80s or 90s, and you can look him up on YouTube and hear his stuff, very controversial, but very powerful, especially if you understand the metaphysics that he talks about. I was just recently listening to him talking about when Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle, and he explains the metaphysical behind that, as well as possibly the historical behind it. And it made so much sense to me of what he was trying to say. And kind of along the side of being poor in spirit, during the Sermon of the Mount, where he talks about being poor in spirit, a lot of people take that as one way or another, rather than the actual meaning, which is those who are, not engaged, or not, very boisterous and all of that. Boisterous and all of that. So, we see those things and make. So when he talks about that being poor in spirit, is those of us who are not rich in the world, as Reverend Ike would say. We are poor to the world, but we're in spirit. We are centered here. We're not allowing the outer part of us. We're here. Then we can enter that kingdom of heaven, as we say, where we can find those internal answers to what we need. So we know that the chapter talks about, how Jesus himself never confirmed himself as being God, but he says things like in Mark 10:17-18, he says, "Why do you call me good? There is no one is good but God alone." And the Son can do nothing of his own accord, only what he sees the Father doing, which is from John 5:19. So in all of these stories, he continues to say that it is through God. And again, there's a lot of practices. As a Reiki teacher myself, I know that I'm not doing the healing. I'm allowing universal energy to flow through me, and I am just a channel. As a minister, I believe that this universal energy that we call God is flowing through me, allowing my talks to come out, especially when I do these talks very free form, because I don't sit and write notes or anything. Maybe, as I do now, I have the Kindle in my hand where I have highlights that I can cue off of, but my talks a lot of times are just from the cuff, from the heart, speaking you to me, heart to heart, hoping that the divinity is what's causing me to speak, and allowing your divinity to hear the words and interpret it in a way that you can understand it and put it to work. So when we look at, Jesus's life, we know that based on the way he talked and the way he worked, that he transcended that of the human form. Now, what I mean by human form is not so much the body itself, but the mind. We tend to see things, whether, especially now in the, as I say, the 20th century, where we're looking at, 21st century, that we're looking at, social media, we have TV media, we have the movies, we have all that. All of that continues to bombard us, but can we rise above it and understand? I know a lot of people aren't into it, but I've been a big horror fan since I was a child. And a lot of people are like, well, how could you see that and walk away from it? And I've heard some talks in traditional where watching horror movies can invite the devil in. And I sit there and go, because as a child, I also read Fangoria magazine. And for those who don't know what Fangoria was, it was back in the day. Now, I don't know if it's still the same, haven't seen one in years, even though I know they're out there. They showed movie magic and movie makeup. So you knew that everything was fake. So I could watch a movie and be like, oh, I know how he did that or how he did that. And it no longer took on that, oh my God, I can't watch this. It took on the, oh my God, this was a great movie, blah, blah, blah. Had some great scares. The storyline was great, blah, blah, blah. And my daughter and I used to do that on a nightly basis, is watch horror movies and just joke about it. There is a funny story behind it where my daughter and I have um, this, again, we watched a horror movie, and if we fall asleep on it, we know it wasn't that great. But if we stayed awake, and my wife joined us one night, and we were watching, I think it was The House of Winchester or something, and we both fell asleep. So in our opinion, the horror movie was not great. My wife said she had a lot of jump scares with it, or at least some scares with it. So we laugh about it now, but she wouldn't watch another horror movie with us. But it tells you, when you can rise above what society tells you, you can actually enjoy things and see them for what they are, which is nothing more than to entertain you for the moment. So we know that he has to work through his own things and his own self-mastery. We talk about, the stories in Matthew 21:12, where he is asked to change the water into wine. And at first he's like, no, it's not my time. Later on, he snubs the Canaanite woman who asks for help for her daughter. And that's Matthew 15, verses 22 to 28. And he was constantly identifying and experiencing his own spirituality. And this is why I say the work is important, because he had to continue to do the work so that he can reach that mastery level. And we even talked today about free will. And we know that in the incident where Jesus returned to the synagogue in Nazareth, he knew the ancient prophecy of the Messiah in the book of Isaiah, and he read it aloud in the temple, which is, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the people. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovering of the sight to the blind. Then he closed the book and sat down and said, today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing. So a lot of people believe that Old Testament proclaimed that Jesus was a Messiah, so forth and so on, where his free will was to choose to live that prophecy. In fact, if you didn't know, at the Unity Urban Ministerial School, that is the school motto. And every time we rededicate ourselves as ministers at the Urban Ministerial School reunion every year, it is something that we repeat and we hear all the time. And it is to remind us that we have been anointed. And I always tell you guys, even though you're not ordained, each one of you is anointed, because each one of you is called to minister to people and to help others. Even though we don't always see it and we don't always agree on it, we are called to help others. So we talk about, again, the struggles. So as we look at Jesus, when you're taught from a young age that Jesus was divine, nothing could touch him, he was God. But we forget in the stories, such as the temptation in the wilderness, where he went off. And, it says he fasted for 40 days. And for those who know metaphysics, knows that 40 days just means until completion. It could have lasted a day, it could have lasted longer, but it was until completion. And he went through human tests, change stone into bread, hunger, stand tall and I'll give you all these kingdoms. Pride, you know, and of course, testing God was one of the other ones. And he said, devil or Satan, get ye behind me. Let that ego get behind me. So I know that even now, when I struggle with mental images and thoughts and things and all of that, I tend to take a breath in and pretty much say the same thing. It's just ego, let it go. Right now, right here, right now, this is the truth that I know. I don't know the truth of the past. I don't know the truth of the future. I just know the truth now. And that's where, when we talk about being in God at the moment, is that. And we've spoke about this before, that when you totally surrender, nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done, how I used it in the past. And it's the same thing with you. And even if you don't believe in anything, think about it. When you surrender to your intuition, and we'll just call it that for now, a lot of times, as long as you know you're not coming from a place of ego or something that's convinced from the outside of you, or something that you're worried about someone else and their opinion of it, when you come from that place, knowing that there's still that calling in you to do something or to stay somewhere or to do it, and you follow it, it may be the scariest thing in the world, because I don't know what's happening tomorrow, but I move forward. Even if it is kicking and screaming with my ego, I still move forward. And Jesus has shown that, especially with the crucifixion. I mean, again, in this day and age, we've seen enough movies where the guy's like, oh, I'm about to be caught, I'm out of here. But no, he chose to stay. He chose to pray. Even when Peter attacked the guard, he healed the guard's ear and told him to stand down, and went with him. So we talked about Wayne Dyer earlier, and I said that, it was during listening to the audiobook of Wayne Dyer's Manifesting Your Destiny. I remember him here talking about John 14:12, which was, he who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works will he do. And it was that understanding of that in the divine, in the miracles, as we call them, that the things he did, the things he spoke, the things he worked on, that we can take it and actually go further with it. And I'm a true believer of that. I tell my daughter all the time, your job is not to mimic the mistakes I do. Your job is to learn from my mistakes and go out and make your own mistakes, because then you in turn teach someone else. So one of the things the author talks about here as well is understanding the difference between Jesus and Christ. And it is the word Christ is not Jesus's last name. The word Christ comes from the Greek word meaning Christos, which means the anointed. Christ is a title reserved for anyone who becomes aware of or fully realizes the depth of their divine possibility, as Jesus did. And it goes along with the same thing as the title of the Buddha, even Krishna. It is just a title given to those who have found enlightenment or found a way to present their divinity to others in the way of their actions and so forth and so on. I used to love when Reverend Diane said, well, obviously my work isn't done here because I'm still here. And I say the same thing sometimes. But I don't, I love that Maya Angelou also says, and somebody says, I'm Christian. And then they go, really? I'm still trying to get there. And it's beauty when you understand that to be the true Christ, you have a lot of work to do. So with that being said, Jesus was so aware of this presence of God in him that he became one with it. He says, I and the Father are one. And that's from John 10:30. And so we call him Jesus the Christ, or Jesus Christ. He was not God made man. He was man becoming more God-like. And I highlighted this in red. It says, when we talk about Jesus, we're talking about a soul so highly evolved that he became the perfect example of God potential in each of us. That is what Jesus was and is all about, finding unity with God and thereby discovering the Christ power within. That's what you are all about too. And that's what the quest is all about. It is about going out there and becoming the best you through the works, through that. Trust me when I say, it is through these works that I can become better. And I hope that in becoming better for those around me, that I become better as a minister, because then I can show you that each one of us can be that much better in our own lives. And whatever we're called to do, we can be the best we can through the tools we learn, through the practices we have. So we talk about the missing link, and it touches a little bit about how through Christianity has lost sight of the human aspect of Jesus through worshiping him. That is decidedly not what Jesus wanted. Remember, Jesus never put focus on him. It was always on God. And we just talked about that in a few biblical scriptures. It was always the Son can only do through God. Why do you call me good? God is the only one that's good. But Jesus realized that the kingdom of God was not somewhere separate and removed from us. It was to be found within the hearts of all people. But instead of looking there, most of us have been looking at him. And I've fallen into that many times where my teachers or whatever, I look to them because they have a title, or, I put them on a pedestal because they know more than I do, rather than see them and hear them and what the lessons they're teaching. Something I'm working on now is that listening skill, to listen, to understand. So I'm not just blurting out something anymore. And even then, a lot of times it's just listening. Nothing for me to answer or to understand. It's just to be there. Maybe for someone else, maybe just for myself. And these are things that we learn as we go along. But again, it goes with the work. And I know I constantly do the work, because that's the important part here. Principle number 5 is not enough to know the truth. You must live that truth. Yes, Jesus Christ was special, but as special he was, we are all special in potential. Note that well. And if you remember, I talked about this, where even in the guides at the Ministerial Metaphysical University, one of the names that people would call God was literally the law of potentiality. We would call this universal power, this universal strength, some people have actually called the law of potentiality, the potential to do and create whatever it is from within ourselves into this substance, which really brings words to Reverend Eric Butterworth's words, where he says, well, we are the potter and the source of the universe is the clay, and we can convert the clay into whatever it is that we want to express into this world. And that could be good or bad, however you want to label it. I've come to learn that it is what it is. It is that situation. Whether I put a good or bad label to it, that's on me. That's how I see it. That's how I interpret it. But in reality, it is just what it is at that moment in the now. We also talk about the second coming, which we hear a lot about. And the way the quest and the way we see it here at Unity, the actual second coming, it has nothing to do with a physical form coming back, but that Christ nature being developed in each of us. And every time one of us develops that Christ nature or acts within the Christ, we have projected that second coming. So imagine a world where we're all tapping into that. And again, don't get hung up in titles, because as there are so many ways of seeking God, when we truly believe that the power is within ourselves, we see that expression come out. In fact, one of my thesis that I'm working on, or at least the title of my thesis I'm thinking of for my master's degree in metaphysics, is how traditional prayer still manifests and how that's happening. Because a lot of times we think because somebody's some other type of Catholic, or they're into Wicca, or they're into Buddhism, that they can't manifest because they're not doing it the way we would do it, which is not 100% true. It is just the way we would express it. What we call it, what we do with it is different, but it all comes through the same channels. And we definitely will talk about that another time. So let's just quickly review. We know that Jesus is the living force whose teachings can show you how to eliminate unnecessary suffering from your life today. Jesus repeatedly claimed he was helpless without God. Jesus is the man. Christ is the divine essence within each of us. Jesus was not God made man. He was man made who became God-like. Finally, Jesus acknowledged his oneness with God and lived from his Christ presence, or Christ essence. And you have that exact same potential as Jesus. And as the song said, be Buddha, be Krishna, because today you may be the only Jesus that someone sees. So quickly, let's just affirm for ourselves together. If we close our eyes and take a deep breath, we say the Christ presence within me is the same presence which shone in Jesus. I let my own light shine so that I too may be a blessing to this world. Thank you, God, for your truth as revealed to me through Christ Jesus Christ. And we'll affirm that with an amen. So as I said, our call to action kind of works around our daily word today. Our call to action may be difficult for some of us. I've had to do a lot of forgiveness work recently, and I'd made a big move, which, trust me, I was reminded that it was big for me for the number of years that I held on to it. But it's to go out and see the Christ in someone. And the exercise is in our adventures book, which is the workbook that goes with this book. And basically is to find someone in your life who maybe you have issues with, or you may be angry with, or it could be a stranger that just rubbed you the wrong way. And is to see the Christ in them, to see the divinity in them. When we say namaste, I'm honoring the divinity because the divinity in me sees you. And we say that all the time, that for me to see something in you, it must be in me. Whether it's I'm angry at you, whatever it is I'm angry about, 9 times out of 10 is already in me to be able to see it. And if I love you, or I'm blessing you, or I see goodness in you, that goodness must be in me. So it's the same thing here. We already acknowledge that we have the Christ presence within ourselves, and we do the work so that Christ presence light becomes brighter and brighter for other people. We want to begin to see that Christ presence in other people. And we want to start with maybe someone that you're angry with, somebody who you still have not forgiven, something of that. May be difficult. Choose somebody easy at first. And then I want you to, through the week, to kind of build on that and let forgiveness work with us. So with that being said, that's your call to action to we. It's the choice again with free will is to make the choice to do the work or not do the work. And I really do hope you do the work, because I do see the potential in each and every one of you. Next week, we'll pick up on the next chapter, which is the Bible. And again, this one held a lot of controversy with me because I grew up where the Bible was used to hurt people, or at least to separate us. And as I grew more into Bible study and more into whatever, I saw how much more the Bible was being used to divide races, to divide people of color, people of different beliefs. In fact, in the Old Testament, it was just other people in the area. We were not there, so they were not part of our family because they were not XYZ, and you can fill in that blank. But coming to Unity and learning more about it and learning more of the metaphysics, I took a new look at the Bible, and there's so much more to it. And now I could even go back to Christian books, movies, songs, and as they're going through me, actually interpret it in a way that works with the New Thought movement. That being said, I am so grateful for you being here today. I truly pray and affirm over each and every one of you. I am so grateful. As always, if you wish to share gifts with us, donate button on the YouTube channel, donate button at the website at weesc.org. Or again, I encourage you, if you are contributing to another Unity, just to keep the movement going. Again, I am plugging into Unity of Farmington Hills in Detroit, which is Reverend Kelly. She's been a spiritual advisor to me recently, and I want to support her and her church. So we've been doing that as well. So anything we receive, of course, they will get a portion of it as well for the work they've been doing with me. That being said, as always, I love you. Nothing you can do about it. Next Sunday, again, no nonsense, no anything, just raw me, raw lesson. And we're going to talk about the Bible. And if you have the books, go ahead and read ahead in the chapter of the Bible. And feel free to leave any questions in the comments. I will answer as many as I can, or you can always email me if you know my personal email. So with that, if Wisdom Wednesday is in my heart this week, it will drop. If not, I will see everybody next Sunday.